Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I like to remind you it literally takes just a few short minutes a day of mindfulness, of presence, of insight, and self awareness to physically rewire your brain for a better life. And I could not have a better guest today than to talk about that because, as you can see, I've got the fantastic Dr. Amanda, and I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try. Tambuyser. She goes by Dr. Amanda Tamby for our American mouths. And she is an empowerment coach. But let me tell you, she's so much more than that. As you see, she's got a DR in front of her name. So, with over 3 years of coaching experience and a Ph.D. in sciences, Dr. Amanda is a modern therapeutic coach that helps women embrace their authenticity beyond fear and judgment. She specializes in addressing core beliefs via different scientific modalities. Her coaching techniques offer lasting change in self perception, addresses anxiety, CPTSD, and depression. She has developed a unique mindset development approach that addresses mental blocks that hinder personal growth. She combines her scientific background and personal journey to create powerful techniques that enable women to break free from feeling frozen, having self doubt, and low self esteem. She is passionate about guiding women towards lasting happiness and fulfillment, finding and operating from the inner self. Amanda, you introduce yourself. What do you want people to know about you?
Hi, Stacy. So
Hi.
thank you very much for having on your podcast. I really, really appreciate this, and I feel very humbled by this opportunity. I like to introduce myself actually as a person who has been there myself and experienced it. And I use the knowledge that I gathered through my life to help women like me. I like to work with people who I resonate with because through understanding, I believe that we can empower much more strongly. And my coaching is about a deep and profound change. What I found through my life is that therapy wasn't enough and coaching wasn't enough. So I want to merge these two modalities and yeah, and like that empower people to, mainly women, to embrace their authenticity.
You sound something really interesting there. And I want to ask, why do you feel like therapy wasn't enough and coaching wasn't enough? Because I feel like, especially in America, we are used to traditional therapy or we're getting there, right? And coaching is relatively new. Why aren't they enough in a standalone sense in your mind?
Well, coaching is very goal oriented, and usually it's a lot externalizing. So it's about reaching your goals, reaching your desires, right? But to know what your goals and desires are, you need to know what's within you. And therapy, it's a lot about the past and what you experienced and dealing with that, right? But how do you put the two together and how do you merge them? And I found that there is, not enough of bridging happening between the therapy and the coaching. And that's where basically I come in because I want people to be able to bridge that. I find that this is very, very important, and this is essential in order to heal, but also find yourself through that healing and also to get to where you want to be.
And then you've got a unique facet to it too, which is the science background. So it's not just psychology or social work or any of that, but you've got a science background behind it too. Tell people about that.
Right. So I use different techniques. I studied different modalities of sciences, such as biochemistry, um, genetics. I also studied some neuroscience. And basically, as a scientist, what happens is that it's not just about what you study. A doctorate is training you how to think and how to analyze things and how to apply this analysis practically. And this is where I think I bring in the most value, because I'm able to sense my clients very well, but I'm also able to apply this analytical knowledge that I gained uh, through finishing my doctorate, and at the same time the coaching knowledge and the therapeutic knowledge that I have. So I find it that it's a beautiful way to expand and deepen um, the results that you can achieve through coaching and therapy, and joining it all together.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous yeah, intersection of all of those three different, highly different techniques and modalities and education to come together in one powerful um, way to help women empower themselves and really tap into who they are at their core. Why do you think people so there's a time and place between the 0 and 7-ish years of age that we're wearing our crazy things. We don't give an F about what people think, and we're just living our best life, singing out loud off key, drawing outside the lines, not having that judgment of ourselves. And then somewhere along the lines, especially women, we forget that we were that beautiful little girl who wore crazy things. Um, why, in your opinion, why does that happen? That we just kind of forget, and then so we need the therapy and we need the coaching to kind of remember who we were back before the world got to us.
I'm happy that you bring this in, because indeed, the years from 0 to 7 are so crucial in our childhood, because we get formed, right? So we are sponges basically that absorb our environment and how we were raised. And what happens is basically when you are in a toxic environment where you're, for example, you were raised by a narcissist, like I was, you learn to adapt and you learn to survive and to please your parents because you want to be loved. And what happens is that you think that this is normal. You're supposed to be a pleaser, for example, or you're supposed to be quiet, or you're supposed to be good. And this is what becomes your story of your life. It becomes your essence, and you carry this through your life because of how you were formed. And the beautiful thing about it is that when you connect with that, you don't apply this anymore in your life, in your adult life, when it's not useful to you anymore. Because as a child, it was useful, it was your coping mechanism, it was your survival mechanism. But usually, as an adult, it doesn't serve us anymore. But we continue telling that story to ourselves, we continue behaving that way, and um, and processing that is very important in order to grow and to find what the adult version of you is, and not what the illusion adult version of you is that you took from childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the nuance there that I want you to expand on a little bit further. Sorry, my teenager came in here and took me off track. Um, life, y'all, life
Indeed.
is the it no longer serves us. But what I know to be true about my healing is for many, many, many years, I didn't know that. I didn't know it wasn't serving me any longer. I didn't realize that it was what was actually keeping me stuck and keeping me depressed and keeping me anxious, and that those people pleasing tendencies were that I developed for safety mechanisms, to be loved and accepted. And you and I talk at least weekly, and you hear me talk about the community and the safety of community, and how shame is at the identity level because of that. Um, and I just didn't know that I was actually being my own worst enemy because I had developed these mechanisms. So maybe give some examples of that would trigger somebody listening to this or watching this that goes, "Oh, wait a minute, that is me. And what do you mean it's not good for me?" Can you give some examples of safety mechanisms that we've developed in our childhood that now as an adults we continue to do but aren't serving us?
Right. I will give you a perfect example from my life. So I didn't know that I was raised by a narcissist until my beginning 30s, I think. Uh, and I wasn't aware the kind of coping mechanisms I was dealing with. But once I discovered that and I started to educate myself and read books, what I have found is that basically how I looked at life was through the prism of being a pleaser. Because deep inside, my core belief was if I do not please, I am not loved and I'm not worth of love. So, this mechanism that I took through my childhood wasn't serving me because I was taking things personally, even like in an environment of, for example, work, you know. Um, Critical feedback is very important, right? Constructive feedback. And I was thinking, oh, I'm trying so hard and nobody's appreciating it. I was victimizing myself and I wasn't realizing that. So I hope this is a good example of one of the ways why these behaviors are not helpful for us as adults, because as a child, victimizing was saving me, and by victimizing, I was avoiding um, my father's outbursts.
I do love that. What came to mind when you were speaking about work in particular, nothing triggers me and my people pleasing more than a boss going, "Hey, we need to talk." I'm immediately fired. I'm immediately in trouble. I am immediately the worst employee they have ever had in the history of ever. Like it is crazy how just a simple "we need to talk" word sentence can spiral me in an instant. And that literally has nothing to do with "can we need to talk?" or "we need to talk." It has nothing to do with my supervisor wanting to have a conference with me or conversation. Has everything to do with what's going on inside for that little girl. And so that's what came up for me when you were talking, is the dreaded "can we need to talk?" or "we need to talk" at work, because then instantly I've done something wrong. Um, there's nothing in that sentence that says I've done anything wrong, but yet that's where I
No,
take it.
indeed, it becomes a story that we tell ourselves because your first reaction, what happens is, oh, I've done something wrong, I'm gonna be fired. And these are the stories that we tell ourselves, but these are also extremisms. And by learning how you can rewire your thinking and change that and tell to yourself, okay, what is another way to look at it? Maybe he has a promotion for me and he wants to talk, right? Maybe he wants to talk and get feedback on another colleague. Maybe he wants to give you another assignment. It can be so many reasons why he says we need to talk. But because of our self-worth and how we look at ourselves, we take that message in that way. And that's why it's very, very important to do your core work in order to learn, retell that story that you told yourself and that is not helping you anymore.
So, what would be an example of you helping somebody do that core work?
What I like, and this is maybe also a tip, what I like to start with is firstly identify what the core beliefs are. I just lost my headphone.
No, that's okay.
um, and the most important thing with the core beliefs is that they are hidden. They are in the subconscious mind, and addressing them is rather challenging. But usually what I do is we work through specific questions with the client, and the client answers until we reach that core belief. Um, and once we reach that core belief, usually because it's so painful, you feel that sudden gush of relief, because you deep inside, that it's just the truth, the inner truth that just came out. And that's very, very powerful and touching. But that's where your work starts, because now you get to challenge that core belief.
Yeah, the work isn't actually getting there. I mean, there is work in there, but that's where the work does start, is when you go, "Okay, now you've got this knowledge. What do you wanna do with it?" One of the great, quotes that I love from Dr. Maya Angelou is, and I'm paraphrasing, but, you did what you could with the information that you had at the time, right? But once you know better, now you do better, and once you have that information, now it is a choice. What do you wanna
No,
do with
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, it's very true. And what I really, really believe in is that our life is compiled of stories. And we keep repeating those stories in circles until we learn our lesson. And until we have learned our lesson, we're stuck there. And once we learn that lesson, we continue with our life to another story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm just gonna totally out myself here. I have always dated the same guy. Always the same dude, different meat suit, because there's the story there, something that I, need to learn in there, and so I continue to date the same kind of, um gentleman that needs or wants to be managed, and then I am more than happy to take on the role of manager because I have a little bit of controller in me, and that's how I feel safe. But then, a couple of years in, I get tired of that, and I wish they were doing something else when they showed me at the beginning who they were, and I just thought, oh, they'll change or they'll improve or whatever that is. And every time I've gotten burned, every time. Um,
And it's
so
frustrating, isn't it, right? It's so frustrating to keep on repeating that pattern, but not really seeing what that pattern is, right? I had a similar thing in my life, and some time ago, so basically, my marriage was going not so well, and I was very frustrated because I felt like I was losing my identity and I couldn't find a way to regain it because my pattern was repeating and repeating and repeating within where I was. And completely by accident, I found an old diary of me where I started to look through everything that I have compiled there from my previous coaching knowledge to um, therapeutic modalities, just quotes and things about my life, basically stories and what happened to me. And it clicked. I was like, oh my God, no way. Life was happening to me, and I was letting that happen. I wasn't taking things in my hands. And that's why I'm repeating that pattern. And now that I look back, I see that, I mean, it was through different situations. I had, for example, a lot of health issues when I was a teenager because a horse stepped on my foot and it wasn't healing. It was like triple the size.
oh my gosh.
And and it was not, nothing was working. Basically, we tried modern medicine, Chinese medicine, you name it all. I don't even remember. I was even prescribed some kind of pills that were also used for cancer patients, that heavy, like immunosuppressants. And what changed there, as an example, was the mindset. Because one day I was like, I don't want to be sick for the rest of my life and not be able to walk. I'm fed up with this. And then what happened is I started to heal.
That's wild that you just was like, okay, one day, I'm done. And then your foot was like, okay, we're good. Let's go.
Of course, it didn't
I
happen,
mean, it was not short, but
through a day. No, of course. But it's what sits there is what important. And our body is just screaming at us and trying to tell us things, but we're not listening. And this is just one example out of my life, but that lesson clearly I didn't get because it was repeating in other patterns. And I realized by taking that diary is what my life is telling to me is that I need to take responsibility for my life and be able to take it where I want to take it and not just let it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of being reactive and just passive, but actually participating in your own life and being proactive, um, this is something that I've been struggling with in my own therapy. I've been very honest about my therapy and how I've been in almost 10 years at this point. And I keep having breakthroughs. And actually, the further along I get, the more breakthroughs I have, which I love because you'd think after 10 years, you'd be like, Stacey, aren't you done? No, no, I'm not done. I'm not done. Um, she's not allowed to retire. She's not. This is a running joke between us. She's in her late 70s and I tell her all the time she can't retire until I'm ready for her to retire. Um, because she has just been so integral in guiding me through my process. And one of the latest breakthroughs I've had is um I'm waiting. I'm not constantly, but consistently enough to be an issue that I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do with my own life. I'm waiting because my mom is she's chilled out in her older age, but she was such a controlling person when I was growing up and very much what will the neighbors think? She was codependent, like just a nice little shitstorm of stuff for little Stacy to absorb. And so I wasn't I got to the point in my childhood that I didn't do anything without her telling me to because I didn't want to get yelled at. I didn't want to be reprimanded. I didn't want to be in trouble. And so here I am at 47 and I'm waiting. I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do with my life. Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming to rescue me. Nobody's coming to tell me what to do. Nobody's coming to live my life for me. And that's been the latest epiphany. Like I knew that intellectually. And I think you could probably speak on this too. Is like intellectually, we know these things, but subconsciously and emotionally, that's not always the same thing. Would you talk about that disconnect between intellectually and then like subconsciously, please?
Sure. I can relate to that, by the way, also through my own experience. And that's where yeah, I felt that's why I felt maybe why this connection is missing because in your therapy, nobody tells you that you need to take action and responsibility. And nobody tells you that you're not broken and nothing is wrong with you, right? They listen to you and they let you go through your journey at your own pace. And with coaching alone, um, you could say, oh, I mean, I remember when I was getting coaching with somebody some years ago, I just said to that person, oh, this is what I want to achieve. I think it was actually about my PhD. I was doubting if I wanted to continue my PhD, and I was considering to go into property because I was just completely unhappy doing my PhD and I was getting depressed. I was so depressed, but my internal body was saying, "Oh, you need to do that." Because my father said so, right? My father had this expectation, and I internalized this expectation that if I would quit my PhD, I wouldn't be good enough. I would be a loser. Um, I would shame myself for the rest of my life. I would be a failure. I would be completely disregarded and forgotten and whatnot. And what the coaching did to me was it never asked what my motive behind my goals. So yes, it challenged me to pause my PhD, and it challenged me to explore the property field. I took 3 months off and I went and I explored it, but I didn't find satisfaction there too. So I returned. But it never covered my core beliefs, and it never asked, okay, what is your motivation? Where are your goals coming from? And because it wasn't doing that, the results, they were not lasting. They were good in that time. I really got something out of it. I experienced it. I felt happy, but it was short. And to me, it was a bummer. It was really a bummer because I really feel that you can achieve more with clients if you tap into to find basically, where is that connection that is missing. And you can actually you can do it yourself. You can start at least doing yourself. What I usually advise my clients is to start through writing. Just go do some free flow writing and notice what your language is and where is the negative talk. And that's your starting point. You're going to start to identify core beliefs that are obstructing you. It can be like, I mean, to me, for example, it was, I'm nobody if I'm not educated, because I need
Mm.
to show how smart I am to people, right?
Mhm.
But the day when I looked at it and I realized that it has to do with wanting to be loved was the day when I got breakthrough, because I realized that I'm just okay whether I have or not a degree, and I don't need to prove that I'm smart, because even after getting my degree, I was still not feeling smart enough, because it was there. It wasn't about the title.
Yeah.
And so that's why this connection is so important to make. But so basically, through writing, this connection can be made. But the hard part is that core beliefs, they're little buggers, they hide in your subconscious. And because they're so painful, it's very difficult to find the real one. And that's why it's important to find somebody who can help you there, because you can do it yourself, but down the line, you can find that your core belief that you found is not deep enough. So basically, you're doing some shallow work and you're not really going deep enough. And a year down the line, you maybe experience a situation where your deep rooted core belief surface, you know and yeah, and then you're stuck again in that pattern of repeating your story because you didn't learn your lesson.
Yeah. I just wanna illustrate something for you guys, or highlight it actually. She said even after she got her PhD, she didn't feel smart enough. This is the problem, especially with Americans. I'll let Dr. Amanda talk about, her side of the world, but with Americans, we're waiting for Friday, we're waiting for $100 more, we're waiting for 5 pounds less, we're waiting for our PhD to finish, to be happy, to be complete, to be full, to be whole, and just like she said, she got it and it's still, and what's the next
And it
thing?
didn't satisfy me. It didn't satisfy me. What satisfied me, when I addressed the fear of letting it go and actually said to myself, okay, I got this degree, but I'm not using it as I thought I should. I can admit that I can be stupid at times because I addressed it, because we all are. We all are stupid. We all are crazy. We all are, idiots, but also we're also smart. We are amazing. We are beautiful, but only if we believe that. Because you can be the most beautiful person in the world, but because you believe that you're not, you will behave like that and you will portray that to other people, because beauty is not about just the image. Beauty is about your stand, how you hold yourself, how you speak, your confidence. And that's why it's very important to shift that.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think if you listen to any kind of any actors that are actually open and vulnerable, they'll tell you that high school was hell for them, that they were, the awkward kid, the nerdy kid. Oprah Winfrey, one of the most famous women in the world, talks about how she felt less than because she was a Black woman that grew up in, poor Mississippi and struggled with her weight all of those whole years. And she still never felt like enough, even when she was a billionaire. And that's because the external stuff is not going to fill that. The Fridays, the 5 pounds less, the $100 more, the PhD, it's not going to fill that. You have to fill that with yourself. And I think that this is where education needs to be greater around that, because that's not taught in American schools about, your self-esteem, your self-worth, and being enough for yourself. We're taught to seek external validation. And so for parents that are listening right now, what do you want? What would be a little thing that you could have them maybe help their children understand, help them model for their children? What would be a question maybe that you would advise that they ask their children, or a phrase that they could give their children to start filling those holes that exist before they're in their 30s and realize I've been repeating the same patterns, or 47 going, I'm waiting for my mom who is
Mhm.
69 and lives, 2,600 kilometers away to tell me what to do. I don't want that
No,
for my
yeah,
kid.
I totally know where you're coming from, because um, I mean, as a parent, we want to do the best for our children, and I'm sure your mother also wanted to do the best for you, right? But sometimes we don't realize what we do doesn't help. And I think the most important thing that you can help your child realize is self-awareness, and also to minimize external validation, because we are so, I think it's like multicultural to say, oh, good job, but this is external validation. And the day that the child doesn't get that good job, the child thinks then, oh, I don't get that attention, something must be wrong with me now. So what I teach my children is, I say you should be proud of yourself. I'm also proud of you, but firstly, you should be proud of yourself. And I try my best to make sure that first they seek for that internal validation, and not because they drew a picture that they immediately look at me and think, oh, what will mommy think? Because it's very important for my daughter what mommy thinks.
Sure.
But I don't say anything. I ask her, what do you think about it? And what do you find good about it and not? Because that's also being realistic, Good job doesn't say anything about your effort or accomplishment. And it also teaches us to seek for that external validation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to again highlight something that she just said there, you guys. In she asked her daughter, "What do you like about it and what do you not like about it?" She didn't say what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. She didn't say any of that. And I I try to be very careful with my words around bad, wrong, failure, um, because those have immediate impact
Of
on
course.
yourself, let alone the children that hear it, or if it's directed at the children. And even the adults that are in my circle, Amanda can tell you, I try not to say failure. I try not to say wrong. Um, I say things like, what's great about that? And what's not so great? Or,
And another thing that you made me realize, I mean, probably, there are so many things that you can do to help your child, but maybe this is even a more important thing that I just mentioned is, um, take care of yourself, because children model us, the same way that I modeled my mother's pleasing behavior, and I had to go through hard experiences to learn my life lesson to stop pleasing, because it was ruining my health, it was ruining my identity, and I wasn't happy. I didn't have a fulfilled life just because I was modeling my mother's behavior. So
yep,
the most important thing actually that you can do to your child or children is take care of yourself, address yourself, model that behavior, educate yourself to be good and compassionate to yourself and forgiving, because a lot of people, they are not able to forgive themselves for being how they are, for a lot of things. I had difficulty to forgive my parents, but once I did, I realized that the forgiveness that I needed to do was to myself, to forgive that I was abandoning myself all these years. And it's a painful forgiveness, but once you go through it, it's so rewarding.
yeah,
It's amazing what you can do with that once you are there.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, I should have a T-shirt that just says "Will self-abandon for external validation," because that's pretty much how I lived most of my years, and now I'm learning not to, and it is uncomfortable, um, and it is painful, but not as painful as realizing how much you actually self-abandoned for others in, whatever aspect, good, bad, or indifferent. Doesn't matter, it's still self-abandonment. And in the end, that's not such a great thing to do for yourself. I want you to touch a little bit, since we're kind of talking around generational trauma, which is kind of what we're generational cycles. Talk about epigenetics for a minute and how generational trauma is a legitimate thing and is
Mhm.
actually passed not only through the behavior models, but also through the cellular level and the DNA, and what happens there too.
Oh, this is a deep topic that you want to touch upon.
I love this topic so much. I nerd out here.
Beautiful. I will nerd out with you. Um, right. It's so complex, but we'll try to keep it as simple as possible in the sense
We'll
of,
just have her
yeah,
back
just
for
like,
a whole other episode on epigenetics. But yeah, go ahead.
um, so it is scientifically proven that when a mother experiences stress, that the molecules, all the hormones that are triggered through the stress responses go to the fetus, right? And basically, from the conception moment, the way that genes are getting expressed in the growing fetus are being affected in very small and subtle ways. And what happens is that it can shape your character and how you are able to deal with things such as stress, um, even anxiety, or what level of tolerance you have, so to say. But also it predetermines what you find okay. So I'll give, for example, my example. I definitely have predispositional um, evolutional trauma, because if I look back in my family, the narcissistic, even alcoholic fathers, they are much deeper down the line, 3 or 4 generations. And I think, or how I look at it, is that for me, I most likely was used to high stress levels in my fetus state. So when I was born, you actually seek for the same stress levels, like also as you develop as a child. And the interesting thing is that through your life, basically, your vibration. So let's say if this is, let's say, a normal way, unstressed child or person, but because as a fetus you were experiencing this type of stress levels, you will be trying to get there because this is your safe space. It's very difficult to make your body unlearn, and the only way to do that is through awareness, because otherwise you will be seeking. And probably for you, Stacy, what happened, that I mean, when you were saying about your therapist and your therapy, and that there were some patterns that you noticed that they were repeating, is that in some way we are addicted being in that state because of these reasons. So firstly, how you were raised, and you were probably always in that fight or flight state.
Yeah, very much so.
But at the same time, because you're also genetically predispositioned, it's even more challenging for your body to say, okay, no, 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 stop. That was us before, and this is the new us. And one tip, because I know that your podcast is also about giving a tip to your listeners, what also helped me greatly is, so I'm in general, I'm pro meditation, but I'm not pro long-term meditation. What I really like is that my clients introduce small moments regularly through the day of 1 or 2 minutes of self-reflection. So we look, for example, at what kind of a client, what kind of needs are there for the client. So let's say visual or stimulus, touch, smell, and we utilize that to make it more powerful, basically. So your mini meditation of 1 or 2 minutes, let's say 3 times a day. For example, for me, it's a sensory thing. So I like to rub my fingers or touch, let's say, gently, or feel my heart, and like that, I come to that de-stressed space where it allows me to ask myself, am I in a good place, and where do I want to go next? Because sometimes, especially what happens with, for example, like anxiety, is that you're aware of it, and because you're aware of it, you get even more anxious because you try to stop it.
Yeah,
you
you're
know
being anxious about
you,
being anxious.
yeah, and you don't take that ride, and by being okay being anxious, you actually go, okay, I'm anxious right now. And suddenly you see that you start to feel, and you start to suddenly, we have a special word for it, so I'm looking for a translation. Yeah, you melt. right?
Yeah,
In
okay.
Dutch we say
Yeah,
zakken. So it's like really like, you melt within yourself.
yeah, that makes sense. That translates. I get that.
So yeah, it's I find it very powerful. And this
I love that.
what was the thing that really helped me with my anxiety also to
Yeah,
to
so try to
melt.
breathe until you get to the phase where you're melting inside in a good way. It's sinking into comfort. If you guys have ever put on something soft or fallen into bed after a long day, it's the similar feeling of like, "Oh, okay, okay."
Yeah, and soon enough you will notice that you start to miss that. So
Oh,
what
for
happens
sure.
in your brain? You are basically rewiring your brain. You had a highway of, let's say, high stress stimulus, and that highway is basically your neurons shooting to that side and using your brain for operating in that way, right? But by doing it another way, you're making a small path. Maybe it's a small path through the grass, but basically you're walking and walking and walking through that path, and it becomes a small road. And eventually, the aim is to make it a highway, right? And the other one is not used anymore, the other highway. So your new highway is your path to that new acquired tool, that new acquired feeling that you get from that tool.
Yeah, and that old highway, it's there. It can reduce to the path, but it will always be there as your default. So you just have to be present, and that's why a few short minutes a day, present, mindful, aware, self-aware, insightful, and you can if you had been on that old path, then you can jump over to the new highway. And that just literally takes a breath after you've practiced it. That's not
Yeah,
an
no,
instant thing.
definitely. Yeah. It's a conscious shift that you will be able to make, and the more you practice, the better it will become.
Yeah, the faster and easier you can make the shift back from the old road to the new road, for sure. I love that you use that analogy. That's the one I use quite often to explain what happens with positive intelligence as well. So I'm so glad that you use that. Dr. Amanda, tell everybody what it's like to work with you. What can they expect and how they can track you down if they would like to work with you?
Well, I tailor my sessions to individual client needs. So I propose that if you are interested to work with me, visit my website and book a free discovery session.
Beautiful. I'll have that linked below, you guys, and any socials that she has provided me with. And so, if you have a question or a comment, or if you want Dr. Amanda to come back and talk more about epigenetics, if that actually piques your interest, I will nerd out with her all day on that. Um, because latest studies have shown that you are actually affected by 14 previous generations. It's about 255 persons in your ancestral line that actually affect you today. And that seems a little daunting when you think 14 generations, about hundreds of years, about 300 years, what life was like 300 years ago for any of us, and it affects you today in
Mhm.
2024. That feels daunting to adjust. But that's why people like Dr. Amanda are here to help you take your hand and say, we can do this together. Come with me. I know the way. That's the reason why you get a coach. That's the reason why you get a therapist. That's the reason you get a therapist coach. But yeah, 14 generations, 255 individual persons. And yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But if you feel like you don't want to live this day again, over and over and over again, then go ahead and reach out to her and let's just see. Let's just see if she's the one. And I promise you, if she's not the right one for you, she will tell you. And she's got a vast network of coaches that she can refer you to. So you won't be left just like, oh, I'm not the one for you. Sorry. See you later. Bye. She's not going to do that. She's not going to do that at all.
No,
So,
definitely not. And the other thing that I wanted to add, even if you are completely not interested in working with me, at least you can use my free resource that focuses on finding your core beliefs and working through them with different techniques. So this is maybe something also for some people to try.
yeah, I love that so much. So, you guys, all of her information is going to be in the description below. Go grab that. Also, do all the YouTube things like subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a question for Dr. Amanda. I'll have her back, or I'll let her know at the very least that the question's there so she can answer them for you. And I just want to say thank you, Amanda, for coming and spending this hour with me and having this chat. You guys, this is her first podcast. Can you even believe it? She did so beautifully. I hope it was painless, my friend.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Stacy. It was a wonderful pleasure for me.
All right, you guys. So thanks for joining me for another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where again, it literally just takes a few short minutes a day of mindfulness to rewire your brain. You guys hear my yard people outside, so I'm going to go because it's about to get obnoxious. But have a great day and thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys next time.